Hello, and welcome back to another Restitutor video. A few days ago, I already made a video. That was a quick tutorial, and I introduced some of the basics. So if you want to learn about the basics and start your game right away, that video is pretty good. In this video, I'm gonna be more in a let's play style. So I'll try to show the whole playthrough in the original speed of the game, so give you good pacing. Also, I can use this time to talk a little bit more about the game design decisions I've made, some of the deeper mechanics and stuff like that. So this video is going to be much less scripted. If you prefer this kind of style, this video is for you. So the first tutorial screen talk about a little bit of background, the history background. So our narrative starts in 192 AD, or actually 193. This is the end of the year. And we are set in the Roman Empire, or in case you haven't get from the name. The first tutorial step talk about these 3 points, the 3 government points: the administrative, diplomatic, and military. So these are the bread and butter of the game. They, like most of the game actions, would require one of them. And there aren't that many ways you get extra. So it's all listed here. Well, actually there are few, maybe there's one that's not listed here, but most of them are listed here. So first you get them from your governor's skill, which is here. So our governor has 5 administrative, 4 diplomatic, and 4 military. And next is advisors. When you hire advisors, you get a little bit extra. You can see that higher level advisors give you extra points, but their cost goes up exponentially, so they're quite expensive. And each advisor not only has a give you the point, but also has a trait. And each trait has some effect. For example, this advisor has a diligent trait, which give us plus 2% land tax. In the beginning of the game, it's usually a good idea to hire the cheapest advisor. You should hire the most expensive you can afford, but since we don't have a lot of money, we should hire the cheapest one. And there's also something called government focus. It allows us to shift some of the points between these 3 aspects, so that if we have, for example, in this case, we have a pretty uneven governor, which is a bit stronger administrative, so we can say that we might want to shift the focus to military, so that we want to even this out a little bit. The next is rivals. Rivals are important. Well, they're important, but they're not that important. The rivals are basically provinces that you kind of compete against, and if you successfully manage to do something against them, we get extra bonus. These bonuses are kind of important because we can snowball them. But when I say they're not that important, it's because this game is more like incremental game. It has an incremental layer on top of a grand strategy. So unlike games like European Universalis 4, some of the openings requires you to be very precise with your move. You have to squeeze every single bit of points out of the gameplay. In this game, it's not like that. It's a bit more casual. Because of the incremental progress, as you gain more legacy points, your opening is going to be stronger. So you can basically power through the early game easier. The real challenge is towards the mid and end game. So in a way, rivals are important. We should definitely do that. So if you want to optimize your gameplay, definitely you should worry about it. But even if you didn't pick the right rivals, it's not the end of the world. So here we pick Belgica because tutorial asks us to start a war against them. And they're a pretty good war goal for the first war. The reason is that they're quite close. And they're not that big. They're smaller, they're close, and we have the same culture and religion, which means that if we annex one of their tiles, it's faster to integrate and it's less problematic after we integrate. So this is a pretty good target. The next rival, let's see. I usually pick Germania because that's usually my second goal. I usually tend to stay in a good relationship with Aquitania because we do have a positive they do have a positive attitude towards us, which means that it's easier to get them into an ally. And Narbonnesis is also kind of a candidate as well. So I think in this game, let's see, let's go around and see which one we should pick. Italia plus 30. Why? Oh yeah, so yeah, one thing that I didn't talk about in the other video is this historical attitude. So when you begin each run, there will be two provinces that has a historical positive attitude towards us, which basically adds, and these two provinces are random, which makes the initial diplomatic situation a bit more dynamic. So each run you start with a little bit different diplomatic situation. So, for example, in this game, Italia is has a historical historical positive attitude towards us. So this is actually something to pay attention as well. So I think for this game, I will pick Germania as our second rival, and I can type Germania, and there you go. The next tutorial talks about is army and war power. So one thing that this game is different from a lot of the grand strategy game is that you don't control individual armies, and you don't drag them around on the map and chase the enemy armies. All of them are abstracted away, and the abstraction is called war power. And war power, which is this number shown here, there are a few factors affecting it. I'll go through this very quickly. The first is the total manpower, which is basically the total populations our province have. And the second factor is conscription. So our manpower times conscription, which gives us our standing army size. In tutorial, they ask us to increase this to 15%. As you can see, increasing conscription doesn't increase the actual standing army right away. It will take time. I think it will take about 1% per month to reach it. So it will take time, but we will actually eventually, after 5 months, we'll have actually 6,200 standing army. The next part is army composition. So for all these standing army, we can make them either infantry, ranged, or cavalry. Each unit type has a base unit power. So for example, infantry has 1, ranged has 2, and cavalry has 3. These cavalries have more base power, but they're more expensive as well. So it's kind of a balance. If you have money, of course you want a bit more better unit type. For now, we'll keep it as is. The next part is army general. So army general affect the war score in a way that all the general skill level are directly added to the unit war power. For example, if we recruit a general, which give us 1-1-1 skill, 1 infantry, 1 range, 1 cavalry, and you can see that this unit power goes from 1 to 2, because 1 comes from the base power and 1 comes from our general. Recruiting a general costs money. It basically increase our army maintenance cost by 10%. There's another option. We can make our governor the general. It's free, but it does add 10% death chance to our governor. And if our governor dies and we don't have an heir, it's gonna be you have a lot of negative impact. You have instabilities. I think you also lose prestige. So in general, I think recruiting a general is pretty good as a first move. Later on, you can decide, do you want to, you might want to actually, if you're financially in a bit of trouble, you might want to make your governor the general. The next part is the army maintenance and morale. We'll talk about that in more details a bit later, because I think in later tutorial we do have a step that covers that. But in general, that's another percentage applied on top of the war power. So this also affects the war power. So all of these added together derive this war power number, and that is the final war power our province has. Next is diplomacy. in the tutorial, it asks us to infiltrate Belgica. So to do that, you need to open the diplomacy menu. There are two ways to do it. You can just click the diplomacy next to the province name, and next when you select the tile, or easier, I just right-click a province. That would just open the diplomacy menu. There are a few. The diplomacy in this game is there are a lot of options, but they're not that complicated. So I'll go through them quickly. So the first section is your treaties. These are the common thing you find in most of the strategy games. Like there you can have a defense pact, you can have an alliance. Patronage is that if we offer patronage, that province will become our client, and that actually unlocks a lot of client actions which we don't show here. We won't cover in details in this video because that's relatively more advanced play. The second section is about relation actions. Most of them are very straightforward. One thing that needs a little bit of explanation, maybe these two. Guaranteed defense is basically saying that if someone attacks that province, we will join their defensive war. Deter aggression is if that province attack another province, we will join the other side. So we will basically deter their aggression. Sending a gift, it's straightforward. We give them some gold, we get some better attitude. And proclaim crusade is, this is actually interesting because this is actually locked. It requires our religion to be Christianity and their religion is not. This is actually, we talk about religion and Christianity a bit later. And in tutorial, in this step, they ask us to infiltrate Belgica. And all of these covert actions actually cost infiltration. And if we infiltrate Belgica, we get 1 infiltration per month. So here we have 0 in the beginning. So we should do it as soon as possible because, once we need it, it will take time to accumulate infiltration. So the last section is great power actions. These are only available when we are great power. And a great power is when we are top 5 of the province. And here we are actually great power. And these are basic. This is the prestige ranking. It's based on the prestige of our province. And this ranking updates every year. So like if you do a lot of actions that boost your prestige, it will only update in the next year. So it won't be immediate. And these actions are very powerful. They're research locked and they have a relatively big cooldown, but if you make use of them, they can actually very drastically speed up your game. Okay, now we can finally unpause the game. And right when we unpause, we get an event. Event is a core kind of narrative tool of the game. So there are a lot of events, and this is a historical event. So if you hover over the title of the event, you can see the condition. So this event will just happen in 193 because there's a historical event. This is the year of the 5 Emperor after the Commodus is dead. We have options, the usual gist of events, right? And when you hover over on these options, you get the effect. So here it gives us either 100 administrative, diplomatic, or military points. As you can see the tutorial here, it requires us to have 50 diplomatic points. So I'll just do that, which very conveniently brings us to the next step of the tutorial. So now we're ready to declare war. So if we click declare war, that actually goes to the war planning screen. This screen has a lot of information for us to make a decision before we commit to a war. So the first thing you notice that you can actually you have to select a war goal. These are the basic tiles that you will get if you achieve a success in the war. So you can click here, or you can actually just click on the map and select these are the war goal. So the war goal you selected affect the war score. Here, as you can see that the base of the war score is the sum of the tile defense. And some other factors also affect war score. For example, we picked 2 discontiguous tiles, which actually requires us a bit higher war score. We can also see that our Casus Belli, which is a conquest mission, give us a bit discount on the war score. So in general, you want to lower the war score because that affects the estimated time to win. We'll talk about how the war are resolved when we start the war, but you want to keep this actually in a reasonable time because, as we can see, that we have a monthly consequences when we are at war. And these consequences actually, for example, the military point and stability actually increase every year. So like the longer the war, the more expensive it become. So in general, we want to keep our war relatively short. We can't afford a really lengthy war. So for our first war, let's follow the tutorial and we just pick one tile and we can start the war. So once the war is started, we can open the war panel here. Actually, let me increase the speed, the game speed. So regarding the game speed, it depends on like how you want to play. Because you can pause at any time, you can actually, you definitely could just play at maximum speed and pause a lot. That is the way that I like to play it. But that requires a lot of attention, and you have to be really, be really focused on the game so that you don't miss important stuff. But if your style is a bit more casual, then you don't really, want to really optimize for fast gameplay, you can also just set it into a slower speed, and that gives you plenty of time. You don't have to pause as much, and that gives you plenty of time to make decisions, to poke around, and it's still fine. So this is kind of like real time with pause style. So about war, I'll let the war runs a little bit, then I can explain. So for the war resolution, here's how it works. So every month, we attempt 3 attacks, and each attack has a successful chance based on the relative war power, which is here. And we can see that for this month, the first attack, we rolled a 37. Because our chance is 66, so we are successful. The second, we roll 30, which is still within our chance, and we are also successful. The third attack, the roll is 91, which is above our chance, and that means we are repelled. The final result of the war for that month is determined in a best of 3. So in this month, we're 2 versus 1, so we still win. So the final result is success. And when we are successful, we get +1 war score. And when we are repelled, we get -1. Let's see, we're very lucky, so we didn't even get repelled at all. So like we actually win 7 months in a row, 7 success in a row. So we win. But if we, let's say, get repelled, we lose 1 war score. And that is kind of like, that's in general how the wars are resolved. So in general, if you maximize your successful chance, that gives you a better odds, and you should finish the war relatively quickly. And after we finish the war, we can sign a peace treaty. A peace treaty basically allows us to annex our war goal, and also a truce will be enforced. A truce is basically the length of the war, but at minimum of 12 months. So because our war is relatively short, 7 months, so a 12-month truce will be enforced. If our war is much longer, the truce will also be longer. So that also favors a bit shorter war. And Belgica will get a Reconquista Casus Belli against us. So meaning that they can, start a war on us by taking their land. But they want to take their land back. So we can sign a peace treaty. So after we sign a peace treaty, we now annex the tile. But the tile we just annexed is not our core yet. A non-core tile contributes less to our province, and we would actually have a higher governing cost. As you can see, we have to double our governing cost, but a tile has a bit less defense, give us less manpower, less tile output, and less land tax. So in general, it's a good idea to core the tile as soon, if possible. And coring a tile costs administrative point, As you can see, we don't have enough administrator point yet. So I'll let the game run a little bit so we get enough points. While we're waiting for the game, I'll explain the governing cost. So if we actually have enough, if we actually don't have enough governing capacity to govern all our tiles, then overextension happens. And overextension applies a penalty on all tiles, which is pretty bad. So in general, you want to avoid having overextension. And I think now we have enough administrative points, so we can core this tile. And you can notice that if I core this tile, the governing cost should reduce, because a tile that is our core has much less governing cost, and it also contributes more to our province. So it's a good idea to core as soon as possible. Next is the tile upgrades. So a tile has 3 upgrade type. There's infrastructure, production, and population. The infrastructure mainly increases our land tax. Production mainly increases the tile output, which also indirectly increases our goods tax. We'll talk about goods tax later on when we talk about production in detail. And population increases our manpower for the tile. And there is this kind of tile overview screen, which I normally use to manage our tiles, because you can get an overview of all your tiles in one screen, so you don't have to click tiles and upgrade them one by one. So here, the tutorial asks us to upgrade the production of our capital. And by the way, our capital actually gets a little bit of boost. For example, the defense was increased by 100%. So it makes our capital a bit harder to be taken by the enemy. And we get a little bit of other boost if we get, if it's our capital. And in general, like if you hover over on a attributes on a property, you can actually see what's the effect. And next is the army maintenance, which we briefly went through, but we didn't actually go into details. Here, as you can see, our finance is red. Right? You can click on the finance and you see the detail breakdown, and you can see the army maintenance was a huge chunk of our expenses. And to reduce the expense, we can reduce the army maintenance cost. The tutorial asks us to go to 80%. And if we go to 80%, you can see that reduces our war power by 20%, and it also reduces the maintenance by 20%. If we actually raise it to 90%, you can see the maintenance actually goes to 90% immediately, but morale actually gradually catch up. But it's much faster than conscription. It's 10% per month. So this is another tool for you to manage your kind of army expense. And the next is the army general and general skill points. So we just won a war, and we have actually annexed a tile. That gives us 1 skill point, which then we can use to upgrade one of these skill. And these upgrades directly feed into the unit power. So if we upgrade infantry skill, you can see that actually boosts our war power by quite a bit. So it is very powerful. So in general, it's good to have you should always have a general, and make sure that we can actually keep them upgraded. But keep in mind that a recruiter general lasts for 30 years. A governor general will last as long as the governor is alive. And when the governor is dead, these skill level, they don't carry to the next general. So you have to start over. So it is important that you make sure that you take care of the general. Next thing is the governing family. We can open the family tree here. As you can see that this is our governor. This is like, he has a skill of 544, and he doesn't have a spouse. So a spouse is actually quite important, because without a spouse, you won't have an offspring. And if, let's say, the governor died and you don't have an offspring, that gives you that actually has a higher penalty. And the Senate will just select some random family to govern as a governor, and I think there's a longer instability penalty when that happened. So we can look for a spouse. there are few. The spouse can come from two sources essentially. Like one is we can pick somebody from local. We can pick from one of the social class. I'll show you about the social class. So in our province, there are three social class. There's the Senate class, and there's the equites, and there is the plebs. So for each class, you can grant them privilege. And when you grant them privilege, that increase their influence and also increase their immediate loyalty. But it will reduce their long-term loyalty equilibrium. This is easy to understand. Like, the more influence you give it to them, if you give them more privilege, they'll be very happy in the beginning, but in the long term, that will make them less loyal to you because they're more influential. So the way to maintain these loyalty is there are a few ways, right? One important way is through arranging a marriage with that class, because that gives them 50 loyalty immediately. So if we do that and go back to the social class, and you can see that now we have 110 loyalty. Their loyalty will still slowly goes down to the equilibrium, which is 40, but then we actually have a much longer time before we need to do something to further increase their loyalty. One thing though, like if you grant them privilege, there's no, like, you basically just have to keep maintaining the loyalty by spending some other resources. Like you can't, like there's no free privilege, right? All the privilege will cost their long-term loyalty, which we need to basically spend either money or marriage or different other ways to maintain that. The next thing we talk about is trade. Trade actually is interesting in a way. So to talk about trade, we have to first talk about production. And in this game, like if you go to like each one of the tile, you can see that there is a tile output. And each tile output a certain kind of like stuff. And this output is determined by the production level. And these output, by default, 50% of them are taxed and become a gold, and the remaining goods are in our stockpile, which then we can trade with other province. And here we can see that the trade, we have a trade with Aquitania that they offer gold and we offer wood. Basically, we're exporting our wood to Aquitania. And I'll talk about these two figures. The first is trade capacity. The trade capacity is essentially how big is the trade, right? So the default value is 1, and we got 1 from event. So meaning that we basically can offer 2 wood. And each wood is worth 2 gold. So we would get 4 gold, but there's another profit multiplier, which basically gives us a bit extra gold. So the profit multiplier is 20%, which means that instead of getting 4 gold, we'll get 4.8 gold. These can be increased through events. I think research is the main way to do that, but certain events also give us a bit higher as well. So we can arrange a trade. And a trade lasts for 5 years, I think. And a trade can be cancelled anytime, but that won't reset your cooldown. So you can only arrange a trade every 2 years. Another thing to remember is that if we attack Aquitania, this trade will get cancelled as well, and we will lose that income stream. So that means that we should be a bit careful who should we attack, especially if they're our trading partner, because if we are in a war, we actually need a bit more gold, and losing an income stream while we need more gold is definitely not something that you want to do. And the next is council election. So every other year, there is a council election. So 2 councils are elected from these 9 candidates. And we can actually back 2 candidates actually. And if the candidate we backed have been elected, we get council points. And these are very powerful that we can, for example, get more tile output and line tax. We can use it to get more administrative points, get points. I think this is one of the sources to get points. We can use to boost stability and boost our war power. There's a lot of action we can do, and these are very powerful. As to how should we, who should we know who to back? This later on we can actually know this through diplomacy and covert action. So I'll show you that. If we right-click Belgica, there is a covert action that says review election backing. So this basically will tell us who they backed in the election. So give us a bit more information that, so that we know who to back ourselves. The other thing we can do is demand election backing. That is a great power action. What it does is that it will force Belgica to vote with us. So if we do that, here our provincial backing is 2. So now we only have 1 because we can only vote with our own province. Now if we actually demand election backing from Belgica, we'll have 2 backing, and they won't be able to vote with anyone, vote their own candidates. They basically have to vote with us. So our vote will basically have 2 provincial backing, which give us a higher chance of winning. In the beginning of the game, it might be a bit too complex. Like if you want to micro optimize everything, you definitely should. And if you're more casual like me, you can just pick 2 random and just try your luck. Who knows? You might be very lucky and then you get some extras console points to spend. If you're not, it's not the end of the world. Okay, next step is technology. So let's unpause a little bit while I talk about the technology. So this is the tech tree. It is not very big, and I will probably add a bit more. The first row all cost administrative points. The second row cost diplomatic points, and the third row cost military points. And you can see when you click onto one of the tech items, it shows you what does it unlock, what's the prerequisite, and the cost. Remember, the cost is actually it's actually dynamic in a way, because research will make, if you research one item, it will just make the next research more expensive. It's regardless of type. So basically there's a global cost multiplier if we research one. So for example, here it shows us we can now research harsh pacification. So we can do that. And if we do that, let's see here. Here it's 266, right? So if we do that, the cost of this will be 292 because, we have one more research. So these costs are actually dynamic. So if we, for example, beeline a tech, well, we actually can't beeline them. Let's say we beeline this tech. This will further increase these kind of costs. So you have to be a little bit careful about the priorities. And what depends on what kind of stuff you need from different technologies. And that can be very important when it comes to which tech to research. It's not blindly you just research everything. Well, once you had enough resources, yes. But if you want to play a bit more efficiently, deciding which tech to research is actually quite important. So we just unlocked harsh pacification, which gives us 1 production. Now let's talk about production. This is kind of an interesting kind of a production simulation, as we just go through that each tile has a kind of a tile output, and we can see that all of them are here. And for example, our wood output, we have 9 wood per month, and the price of wood is 2 gold. So every month the taxable value is 18 gold. Our tax rate is 50%, which we can change. And so out of the 18 gold, 9 become our gold tax. So basically it goes into our treasury. The other 50%, which basically they are 4.5 wood, is going to be in our stockpile. So to actually, so this 4.5 wood per month, we can use it for lumber production. For our province, we get base value of 5, so we can assign 5 production to different production chains. Since we only unlocked one, we don't have other things to assign. If we can actually assign 5, and here it shows a red, and that means we actually goes into a deficit, which is not always like scary as the red color shows, because we have like 200 wood in the stockpile, so we can let it drains that excess wood for a little bit by going into a deficit. If you're a bit lazy, you can always use this kind of automatic setup production. This will set up your production so that you won't go into deficit, which is quite often what you need. And if you're lazy, clicking that button usually works. But if you want to optimize and squeeze out some extra value, for example here, it's better to just go into a deficit and produce more lumber. And we can go through the lumber production as well. Right? So for the lumber production, we produce 5 lumber per month, and the taxable value is 25. So we get 12.5 gold and 2.5 lumber, which we can then use for producing weapons. We can also use it for trade. And speaking of trade, we can make a new trade. Let's see, do we have any good trade? We can filter only available trade. In general, I'd like to export some of the resources first, so that we get some extra cash. Let's see. Okay, Belgica want grain, so we'll pick that one as well. And on the left, you can see that there's a new Senate election, and I don't think we won we actually I don't think we get any council point from the last election, so we can pick to a new one. Now, if in the game you feel like, oh, this is a bit too much, I have to pick every 2 years, there's one automation you can do. You can just turn this on. This will basically pick to random candidates. If you don't want to spend effort to maximize your chance, or if you feel like, this is something I don't want to worry about, you can just let it essentially turn this into a lucky draw, and you could just say, I just want to automatically just pick 2 for me, and I just want to try my luck. This is something you can do as well, if you don't care about that part of the gameplay. You will lose some progress in a way, but that's because we are kind of an incremental game, and in the long run this probably makes very little difference. Now that's the most of the core gameplay, so let's unpause the game and plan our next move. I'll play the game a little bit more before we wrap up. So let's see the situation. So our truce with Belgica has just ended, so we could start a second war. But before we start the war, we might want to get an alliance first. Well, we want to get an ally, so that the war be easier on us. Oh, there's a new event. This is also a historical event. This is the Battle of Luc de Loom. Luc de Loom is basically Lyon, I think, nowadays. The Battle of Luc de Loom. So this is kind of like we have to decide, do we want less manpower or more tile maintenance? Okay, I'll take the manpower, since I don't think we're gonna start the war in a year, so I'll do that. We have 1 idle diplomats, so if we're making an alliance with Aquitania, we need to have a higher attitude, or they need to have a higher attitude towards us, so we need to improve the relations with them. So that's our 2 diplomats all spent. And we can let the game run a little bit. I'm mostly now waiting for the research, because to make a diplomatic treaty, I do need formal treaties. Right? I need about 300 points. I'm out now at 222, so we should be quite quick. Meanwhile, let's go through this is the Chronicle. So every 5 years, I think, by default, we get a Chronicle. A Chronicle basically summarizes the big events during the past years. So here we can see that, actually this is us, right? This is our war with Belgica. It says that we declare war on Belgica, and we have, signed a peace treaty, and we actually gained this tile. And Italia has declared war on Sicily. Really? Oh, this is kind of rare. You don't usually get that. And Africa declared war on this province. So you basically get a little bit of events summary. You can also open the full chronicle here. You can click on these to actually quickly know where are these. So what are the events. So okay, let's continue. There's also an event. You can see this is basically bouncing. Sometimes, like when you have too many pop-ups, event pop-up might be missed. So you basically can have this. You can bring this up right away. This is, I think, is also a historical event. It basically, there's a victory on the war with Persian. So we can either choose gold or stability. I'll take gold. I don't need stability. I think our stability is okay. Yeah, we've got 0. 0 is fine. As long as it's not negative, we're not in a big trouble. So 0 is fine. Let's see. We should be very close to getting our research done. So let's see. So Germania. Actually, we can make a new trade. Is there any good trade? Good for lumber. Okay. We will take this one because look at that, 11 gold. That is a lot of gold. It does have a warning. It says we might not have enough storage. And we might not have enough stockpile for that trade, but that's okay because if we don't have enough stockpile for 1 month, that month's trade will just get skipped. It won't cancel the trade, so which is not that bad. So I'll take this one. And we can research. Actually, we can research this one first. Appeasement. Do I need appeasement? Actually, I don't think I need appeasement for now because we want to start a war and we want to have a treaty. So we want to prioritize formal treaties first. So we can research this a bit later. Oh, we got a new heir. So a child is born. Yes. So we can either choose gold or stability. I take gold. We can look at our family. Yes, we got a new heir. So it's a girl. That is actually interesting. So we can offer a marriage with Britannia, and they have a little boy as well. So we can arrange a marriage with Britannia. I think I'll take that. One thing though, if you married one of your daughters away, your daughter will join the spouse's family. So actually she will disappear from our family tree. And if we do that, you can see that we actually, she disappeared. So she will join her husband's family. And if we click this one, you can see we have a marriage alliance with Britannia. And we get plus 50 attitudes as long as that marriage is active. Well, in this game, there's no divorce. Well, not yet. The reason that the marriage alliance might be, might end is when, let's say, one of the spouses is dead, or that governing family is no longer the governing. Like there's a new governor. The governing family no longer is the family to governing the province anymore. So that's that. And look at that. We actually get a council point. See, we basically win the lottery and we can choose what do we want. We can either get more gold, but I think our financial situation is pretty good. I don't think we need more gold, so I'll just take the points for now. Okay, let's check our research. I think our research is probably fine. Yes. So we can research formal treaties. Let's do that. And we go back to this diplomacy. Can we offer alliance? We don't have enough diplomatic point. That's true. We actually need to get a bit more diplomatic points. Let's see. We still can't change focus yet, so we have to wait a bit. But we actually have a pretty weak diplomatic skill from our governor. So we don't have our diplomatic point kind of choking our progress. But it's not that bad. There's a new event. And this event is actually I think this is a narrative event. So this is only available to us. So, and you can see the condition here. I think this is only available to our province. It basically, we get +1 cavalry skill, which is very nice because, you know, we are part of the Gaul, and the Gallia province has a pretty good cavalry base. So we actually get +1 cavalry skill, which is very nice. We don't actually have any cavalry, unfortunately, because they're quite expensive, but we might be able to afford that for our next war. We'll see. So we will wait until we have 50. Let's see, 50. There you go. We can offer an alliance. Let's get Aquitania as our ally. I wonder, can we get Britannia? No. Well, actually, yes. Everything is fine. We just need diplomatic point. We need to have a diplomat, which we actually have one. We actually have one infiltrating Belgica. We can just move that diplomat to Aquitania. And should we do that? Oh, maybe not for now, because I think we're pretty good with alliance. I think if we start a war against Belgica with like an ally, that was already a pretty good chance for us. We can make a new trade. Let's see if there's any good trade on the market. Livestock. Okay, there's some good trade, but we don't produce some of them. So, okay, I'll export livestock then. So let's see. We are planning a war against them. So yeah, if we actually start a war, we actually are in a pretty good odds because we have an ally, and our ally would join the war. And this shows, like, you know, whether our ally would join or not. It's not a guarantee they will join, and there are some conditions, and the conditions are shown here. So we can pull Aquitania into this war, which means that we're in a pretty good shape. We just need to get 50 diplomatic points before we can start the war. While we're waiting for it, we can actually pick our tile. So we can pick and see which are good tiles to start a war on. Like, I think these two are pretty fine. These will make the map a bit ugly because Belgica now would be split into two, which is ugly, but okay, now we get a council point as well, so our luck is pretty good. Let's see, we should do, since we are starting a war, let's do mobilization because that gives us a bit extra war power. So makes the war especially good. And there you go, we start war. There are a few things we could do to further boost our chance. Oh, actually, wait a minute. There's another event. This is the event that actually. This is also our narrative event. You can see this is only available to us, and this is a good chance to talk about religion and Christianity. So I'll show you here. So in these, where's internal affair? Internal affair. There you go. So there's a religion section that shows that our current provincial religion is Celtic. So we're Celtic religion, and our religion cohesion is 100%. So all our tiles have the same one. And there's another thing called Christian influence. The Christianity influence increases by 1 every year as a base. So once our Christianity influence reach the governing cost, we can convert to Christianity. We don't have to. And if we don't convert to Christianity, there will be a negative penalty applied to us. So the way to increase these kind of like Christian influence is through this event. Well, there are a few events that actually increase these. And this event, for example, the first one, it gives us +10 influence immediately and +1 event per year for 2 years. So this one gives us plus 10 land tax and plus 10 tile output. This one gives us minus 10 influence and plus 10 prestige. I don't really need prestige because we are pretty good in diplomatic standing. I'll take the more money, and I won't take Christianity. In general, there are a lot of benefit when you convert to Christianity. There are a lot of because the narrative would actually push you towards that trend, but you definitely don't have to do it. You can just you don't have to follow the narrative kind of nudge. You can just decide I want to remain pagan for the whole run. That is completely fine, although it might be more challenging. All depends on your goal. So our war, let's see, let's let the game runs a little bit, right? We can do it at a bit higher speed. The war is going fine, I believe. Although we have been repelled for a bit. I think it will be fine. We have enough stability to get the war going, and we're in a pretty good financial situation as well. Okay, Chronicle. I don't think anything happened. Well, we declare war. Well, there's actually quite a lot of things happened in the past 5 years. I can go around the map, see these. There are quite a few wars going on. Okay, we can research a tech. There are 2 tech we can research, right? Is this 2? Yeah, so appeasement or mercenary? I think I'll research mercenary. I think it's a bit more important since we're doing a little bit early aggression. So having a little bit of more war-related research is good. And let's see, we get better trade this time. Nope. We don't get better trade. Well, we'll just take a normal trade then. Oh, okay. Decent is rising among social classes. This is what I talk about, right? So even though we have bought a lot of influence from the Senate class, eventually these will be used up, and the decent will be actually rising. And when decent exceed loyalty, this class will be in descent, and we will get some negative effect. So we could try to get a bit more loyalty, or we could just revoke that, which basically would increase the loyalty equilibrium. So this will slowly rise up, and dissent will slowly die down. But then we don't get the benefit out of this. So we can let it run a little bit. I think that will be fine. How is our war going? Okay, we're about to win, I think. Actually, we just won. So, yes, we got mostly wins because of really good odds, and we're repelled actually a few times. And peace treaty. You can see that the peace treaty is 32 months because this is a 32-month war. And we got 2 tiles. We take that. And there you go. We got 2 tiles. We need to make core. And the first thing I usually do is I make core. Let's see. This one. But making core has a cooldown. So if I make core, I think I have to wait for a year before I can make another core. So, which means that I need to make sure that I have enough buffer for governing capacity so that I don't run out of it, because it will be quite tough if I have to wait for a year when my province is in a kind of, it's having overextension for a year, which is quite tough. And we can upgrade our general points as well. So I'll upgrade infantry. Well, actually, I don't have any points left. I can only upgrade infantry. You can see there's a truce going on. And what about descent? So our loyalty is slowly rising up. The descent, it's still rising up, but eventually it should die down, right? The descent, it's dying down a bit. At least it's increasing slower. So I think once we get to 50, they should basically die down. So we might have a little bit of descent for a brief period of time, but in general we should be okay. Oh yeah, we're in a cooldown. So yes, research. Well, we can research appeasement. We can use the points to research, or we can use it to upgrade our tiles. I'm not sure which one to take. I think both are fine. Both are fine approach. I generally, because I'm doing mostly war, I don't really need appeasement, although it does unlock production. So, okay, maybe I'll take this one because it does unlock a production, which I think, where's the production is here, so allows me to, there you go, have a little bit more production. That gives a bit more chance for us to have a better trade. Then we can make more money. So let's let it run a little bit. And the tutorial, I still keep the tutorial window here because the last step the tutorial talk about is rebirth. As you can see that my run has lasted for quite a bit. So you don't actually have to do short rebirth like a lot of these games force you to do. Like you can let your run for a bit before you rebirth, and I usually let it run for quite a bit. So I like a bit longer runs, which from a pure progression point of view might not be the most optimized way, but I play the game to enjoy the game, so I don't really need to play for the most optimized way. Okay, can we make core? Yes, so we can. We can make core now. There you go. So we have core 3 tiles. So this is a good chance that we talk about rebirth. So when we rebirth, all the tiles we've annexed and cored will become legacy points. So if we rebirth, in the next run, we will have 3 legacy points that we can spend. And each of these actually costs, I think the level 1 upgrade costs 1 legacy point. So this will give us a pretty good early boost. And we can actually, so these 3 points will be very useful when we start our next run. So we can also choose a different province. Well, for the demo, we only have 1 province that's available. So we can't do that yet. But we can definitely choose another province. And even if we choose another province, all of the legacy points are going to still be with us. So we can rebirth. There you go. So as you can see, now we have legacy points. We can get a bit of upgrade. 1, 2, 3. And yeah, that's the gist of the core loop. I think I've covered most aspects of the game. There are a lot of details, a lot of mechanisms that you probably will discover while playing the game. But yeah, this is the core gist of the game. With that, I will end this video. I hope to see you around.